8 ladies out there with a 2-liter bottle of cheap white wine, and everybody had an hors d'oeuvre. It was steaming. The roads were still steaming from a thunderstorm. It had to have been 90 degrees with 90% humidity, and they had a fire going in the fireplace. And I thought, if we could create that kind of gathering spot, that kind of community for those people who need that kind of relationship to come from being in the neighborhood, we should do that more.
Hey guys, welcome back to Design, Build, Sell. Today we have a good show for you. We have Andy White, the managing partner of Lifestone Communities, on with us. I'm your host, RB Gallup, joined with
Alicia Dobby
and Sarah Bennett. And Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. So I have had the pleasure of knowing Andy for several years. I live in Saluda River Club, as does Alicia. And Andy is the master behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. I don't know how you want me to say it, but Andy's kind of the guy who made this. I feel
made it happen.
He's the face of it. But Andy, I would love to hear a little bit about your backstory and what then led into the development of Saluda River Club.
Okay, well, Sarah and Alicia and RB, thanks for having me today. I like to think of myself as the guy with all the debt associated with Saluda River Club. We started Saluda River Club really on a lark in 2005. When Syntex, which was at the time the largest track builder, national builder operating in Columbia, and they made the decision to withdraw from the Midlands and the upstate market. And we were happily retired, hanging out. We'd sold the company about a year and a half earlier, and my partners called me one day and said, would you like to put together a partnership to bid on the Syntex property, because they're pulling out of the upstate and the Midlands? And what they really meant to say was, we don't know how to use an Excel spreadsheet and we'd like your help. So the Odyssey started in August of 2005, and we were the successful bidder. And the reason we wanted this property was because it is absolutely the best location for a residential neighborhood in the Columbia market.
I agree
as well.
A lot of objective qualifications. It is the largest assemblage of developable acreage that one could have inside School District 1, so close to I-20. I-20 gets you to the jobs, it gets you to the cultural attractions, it gets you, everything was right about the location. What we didn't know is that we were going to have a new high school in our backyard when we started. So we had attempted to buy the property in 2003 when the family first put it on the market, and we were unable to win that, but we won the bid, and we actually bought 1,800 lots in one form or another, whether they were just entitled or whether they were actually on the ground in Greenville, Spartanburg, Richland, and Lexington counties, in order to secure this piece of property. And Syntex had already started developing it. They had cut down all the trees in what's now the Village District, and they had some curb and gutter in, so we had to pull all that back up and start over again. So we closed on it in September of 2005, and we had our grand opening 3 years later in October of 2008.
Wow.
So starting in 2008, great year for new construction. I mean, what a time to decide to take on a project like that. Did you have any reservation? When did you see the signs that there was going to be the real estate? I hate to use the term real estate crash, but when did you see the signs that was coming, or did it just all of a sudden just hit you like, wow, this market?
No, it was the credit markets began quaking around July 4th of 2007. So we were almost 2 years into the development process when we saw it happening, and there was really no way to turn back. Of course, no one knew how bad it was going to be. It was impossible to know how bad that housing depression was going to be. We had, at that point, 17 builder members on the builder team, and only 4 survived enough to be able to build houses in the Village District and the River District. We picked up 2 more, so we opened with 6, but it was tough.
First met you or heard you speak, it was 2010. So I started building in 2010. That's when I came on worked with my dad. And it was a meeting, I think it was 2010 at the Chickasaw Center. Y'all had a meeting, and it was, to rally the build pack and whatnot. And Andy was speaking, and I was like, what did I just join here? Everyone was doom and gloom, and it was an interesting period of time. Y'all were doing well at Saluda River Club, but every builder I talked to was like, are you staying busy?
RB, you're one of the newcomers, but I can tell you that most people don't understand exactly how bad that crash was. And just in Columbia, between 2005 and 2007, there were 616 builders active in Richland, Lexington, and Kershaw counties. It was a robust group of builders, a lot of what we call pickup truck builders or spec builders, guys that were craftsmen. Maybe a trim carpenter got to the point where he wanted to step up, so he had a buddy that was a plumber and another was an electrician. That's how so many of those builders got in business. It wasn't unique to Columbia. It was all over the country. But of the 616 builders that were active from 05 to 07, by 2010, there were 40 left.
Wow.
That's exactly what you said in 2010. I remember that's exactly what you said. At
Imagine if you were in the insurance business or any other industry,
Yeah.
and 94% of your competition goes away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened in the home building business.
That's crazy.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. So talking about 2008, you have, of course, now we've had a very different market. The COVID market has also been very, very difficult. But what I think you and I have actually talked about this before, but I have so many uneducated buyers specifically who keep on referring to it. Oh, it's going to be like 2008. It's going to crash again. I've tried to educate people. I'm sure that RB and Alicia have had to do the same. What do you say to people who try to say that the market that we're in now is going to be like 2008?
No, that's absolutely wrong. It's fundamentally different.
Yeah.
2008 was driven by, there is one area in which you could say they're similar. It's that government policy led to the crash in 2008, and government policy led to the boom in 2020, and government policy has led to the current downturn. The market in 2008 was well beyond exhausted. We've been overbuilding as an industry coast to coast for about 3 years at that point. I mean, we had specific examples of entire street blocks in subdivisions in places like Las Vegas and Tampa, where a taxi driver was buying 6, 7, 8 houses with no doc loans. So we were building houses that were completely unnecessary. Of course, they were doing it in the anticipation of a quick profit by flipping the houses, and I suppose the early guys it worked. But there was no structural demand to support the number of houses that were being built during particularly the last 2 years of the previous cycle. This time, there is a wave of demand, real demand for housing, and it is not being met, and has not been met even with the surge of housing that's occurred over the last 24 months. So that demand is still there.
Yeah.
I feel like the old gray hair here. I guess I actually am sitting around a room full of millennials, which I'm still not sure about this format, but we'll see how it goes. The number of younger people the age of my children and your peers, your siblings, who want a house, need a house, and can't find a house that's acceptable to them is what sets this market downturn way different, way apart from what happened in 2008 to 2010.
Yeah.
How much do you think location factors into the current demand? So are you watching the national numbers? I mean, I have a feeling that people are wanting to move to South Carolina versus other places in larger cities.
Well, yes, it certainly makes a difference, and there is more demand for any Sunbelt state. South Carolina is one of several that's benefited from that move. I mean, we all know that we've been selling houses or building houses for people who just traditionally would not have shown up in our door. But what I think is going to be impactful for us here in South Carolina is the indirect effect that couple or individual moving here from Chicago or New York or California, wherever, has to be able to sell their house on the other side to be able to make the move. I mean, that fundamental fact is still in place. So as the interest rate manipulation continues by the Fed, I think we'll see more and more difficulty on that place of origin, being able to monetize their house and get down here to us. Doesn't mean they don't want to do it. It just means there's a temporary hold on it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that makes Saluda River Club so appealing is the different districts. It kind of has a vibe or an aesthetic for each set. How did you come up with that idea?
I have experience before this in master plan community development, both in Arizona and South Florida. That's where I got my chops on this. And you have to have, if you're gonna have, in the case of Saluda River Club, 700 different houses, you have to have something to appeal to a broad group. I think I spend a lot of my time really not so much builder as demographer. If you think about what Saluda River Club is doing right now, the lowest price home in Saluda River Club starts at about the 97th percentile of the Columbia market. So we're only selling to the very top 3% of the triangle, the pyramid of builders. We're up at the very top. And in order to do that and have any kind of volume, you have to appeal to different consumers. So what you see in Saluda River Club, it looks to you like different kinds of homes or different designs of houses or different lot sizes. But really what it is a response to the feedback we get from the market from different consumer segments, if that makes sense.
No, I think it's super smart.
Don't you go to design shows around the country to like see what other communities are doing around the country and take some ideas from that as well? I mean, like shows and stuff like that?
When Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric back in the day, he had a saying that not invented here is okay. So it was the task of his senior leadership to figure out what their competitors were doing that might be better than what they were doing at General Electric. And he was quite the flash back in the day. And we'd have to listen to books on tape then. It was not, couldn't stream it. But so I remember riding out to Arkansas to go duck hunting probably 20 years ago, listening to Jack Welch talk about that. And I decided that I would travel and go and look. So when Debbie and I go on trips, it's always centered around some kind of architecture.
Right.
And we've been to, South Florida. We've been to Central Florida. We've been to Arizona. We've been to Las Vegas, all over California. We've been to Italy. Every place we go, we're looking at the architecture. And really what I wanted to understand, you can see how people are reacting, how architects are reacting to a market as vibrant and large as the Southern California suburban residential market. You can see what the best residential architects in the world are doing, how they're reacting to consumer demand out there. So you can get a pretty good picture of what's happening. What happens in California first happens here later.
Right.
It's kind of like it goes from California to maybe Florida, and then it bounces to us.
Right. So what I wanted to do was get ahead of that curve. Let's go see what they're doing. But one of the things that you have to be careful about when you're paying attention to this new residential architecture is they very frequently lose sight of any architectural history. And we've been very careful to try and bring some context to everything that we build, that you could see it in a 200-year-old village somewhere else in South Carolina, or you could see it maybe in the desert Southwest if it was a hacienda that was built, in Albuquerque 150 years ago, or in the Texas Hill Country. I always want to make sure that there's some real architecture involved with what we do. And I think that's one of the things that makes it appealing to folks, so they can sense that. They don't know necessarily what they're looking at, but they know something's different.
You go into a neighborhood and it has no message to it. You just don't have that sense of continuity, which gives you that richness, the feeling that it's a community. It's not just a bunch of lots.
Well, I think it starts well before you get to the architecture of the homes. I worked for a company called Pulte Homes back in the day, and Bill Pulte was a genius. He probably spent 2 decades as the largest builder in the country, and his message to his leadership team was that we're not selling a house, we're selling a house on a lot in a community. You have to have a community, you have to have the house, the lot, and you have to have the house. It has to be something right about all of it.
I love what you were talking about, how when you and Debbie go places and you specifically are looking at stuff, do you ever go and like you see something and you love it and Debbie's like, no, we're not doing that, or vice versa? Because she's very involved in a lot of the design aspects that y'all do, correct?
She's way more involved in the geometry and the fixtures, the fit and fixtures in the house. She leaves the streetscape, the hardscape. She doesn't really participate in that as much, and likewise, I don't spend that much time with the insides.
Right.
I mean, I know what the geometry needs to look like. My thing is when I walk in the front door of a house, I want to see sunlight in at least two directions. And if I'm bringing the outside to the inside at the front door, gives me a leg up on houses that don't have that feature. So that's kind of how that works. But the travel, I mean, we've seen a lot of crazy stuff, and we've tried some of the crazier stuff here. But you know, when you see how the original inhabitants of a place like Cinque Terre on the Ligurian coast of Italy, how they dealt with hillside. You know, the houses probably started out as caves, and then they put a door on the cave, and then they built a wooden structure out front. But over the millennia, they worked into something that was just perfectly chaotic and perfectly beautiful at the same time. And a good example of that is what Hillside, our Hillside community, is ultimately going to look like. And that's exactly where it came from. You know, 72 homes without a single horizontal line running from one unit to the next. The rooftops are all the same. So when you're paddling by on a kayak or walking by on the trail, you look up and you see something that's just super cool.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you have a favorite floor plan that you've built so far?
There are two. There are two, and for uniquely different reasons. We made a rotation here, and you guys have seen it, toward more mature buyers. And we did that because older folks have more money.
Bingo.
And I think that the first cottages that we built over near the sales center, that was one of the most satisfying little pocket neighborhoods I've ever been involved in. And we had a house plan in there. I can't remember what we called it. It was about 1,750 square feet. And I think that at least a third of the square feet in that house serve at least two purposes. So you can stand in the middle of the room, and that same square foot is part of the kitchen, it's part of the dining room, it's part of the living room, it's part of the foyer. It was just incredibly efficiently designed. And the impetus for that was Debbie and I thinking, man, we need to come up with some way for us to move down. And we designed that house for us.
Really?
And it turns out it won Best New Home Plan, probably that was in 2012 from the National Association of Home Builders. So that was a super cool plan, and you will still see it today in the current cottages in the Woodlands District, and you'll see it in the new upstream section that's coming. We're going to have another group of those cottages, this time with integrated golf cart garages. We had to just,
Of course.
Yes.
you gotta get that place to park the golf cart. So the second plan, that was for a very specific reason. That house was cool. And then our Venado plan, which was the model in the vineyard, and we continue to sell it today, is just one of the best plans I've ever walked in, whether it was mine or somebody else's. And we can sell those all day, even today. We had a bid war about a month ago on a house that came back on the market. We actually had a bid war after the interest rates had gone up, the market had cooled down. I thought those days were over.
Yeah.
But so the Venado and the cottage.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. The cottages are very charming. They draw everybody in.
Oh, especially like just the little courtyard area is just so inviting. And, I think it does draw to that older crowd that wants to, I think that's a lot of people our grandparents live in the neighborhood that live there. And I think they just find it's open, but it's also charming and like cozy. And I think it's
Sarah,
great spot.
this will give you an example of you can cut up whatever you want to cut.
Oh yeah, we will.
I don't know what the length of the deal is. You ask me.
This is going to be a 2-part series, Andy. If the no, I'm just
however
kidding.
you want to roll it.
We don't
However
use
you wanna roll
film
it.
anymore, so
That's all. It's free. When the landscape planner, a guy named Cooter Ramsey from Allison Ramsey Architects down in Beaufort, first lined out what he called a pocket neighborhood, which is where those 12 original cottages sit. I had no idea what he was thinking. And Debbie and I were in Oregon for a wedding. A friend's daughter was getting married out there. And we spent 4 or 5 days just traveling through Oregon drinking Pinot Noir because I wanted to learn how to drink that, because some are really good and some are really bad. And
Oregon has some good ones.
so we ended up on the coast of Oregon, and I knew that the guy who was like the lead, he was all the rage with pocket neighborhoods, had a couple of them on the coast of Oregon, and we stopped, and man, when we saw the first one, the lights just went flashing. So we came back and we developed those plans for that. But I knew that I wanted to sell. My primary target for that was single females over the age of 50. I told you I segment everything. I wanted to sell to single females over the age of 50. And we based the exterior architecture on a couple of houses in the Kendall Mill Village over in Camden. I'm from Camden, and there were some houses over there that had been redone, but they were, early 20th century mill houses, and they were the right size and the right scale. And I knew that if I were going to appeal to older females, that I would need some soft colors. So the color palette was pastel. And we did very intentionally highly organized, symmetric landscape in between. And as a result, 8 of the original 12 purchasers in there were single females over the age of 50.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
But we missed 4. We missed 4, and those were sold primarily to couples in their 60s. And I thought, well, sheesh, maybe we ought to do something for couples in their 60s and flip it around. And that led to, I know a lot of people hate it. Some people love it. We call the cottages in the Woodlands District the swamp shacks.
I love them.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah,
And we had this opportunity presented by new government regulation. They after the entitlement, they imposed a creekside buffer. So we built the wall on the buffer line. That's what it is. But if you look what's there, it's the same thing. It's the cottages opposing each other, the front of the house overlooking the front of the house, this time over a natural area. So we used earth tones, put more stacked stone on it, put the garages on it, raised the price, and flipped the percentage around so that this time 2/3 were couples in their 60s and 1/3 was single females. But the real driver, I will tell you the real driver for everything we've done with that particular project, and it's helped inform a lot of the decisions that we've made, is the sense of community that those original 12 residents at the cottage district had. It developed very quickly, and this is one of my favorite stories. I'll tell you quickly. We have a garden at our farm over in Camden, and I mean, we have tractors, so the garden got out of hand. And it was too much for my 90-year-old father to look after, so I'd go over on Saturday, and we'd fill up the back of the Suburban with vegetables. And it was an August Saturday afternoon, and there was a nice lady named Robin who lived in there, and I took vegetables to Robin. Well, I got there, and they were all out there. There were 8 ladies out there with a 2-liter bottle of cheap white wine, and everybody had an hors d'oeuvre. It was steaming. The roads were still steaming from a thunderstorm. It had to have been 90 degrees with 90% humidity, and they had a fire going in the fireplace. And I thought, if we could create that kind of gathering spot, that kind of community for those people who need that kind of relationship to come from being in the neighborhood, we should do that more. We should do it intentionally.
Absolutely.
And that shows up in a lot of the stuff we've done since.
Yeah.
I want to go on vacation with you and drink wine and look at architecture. That's
He's going. Where are you going?
my
next
wife
month?
would love that, except
Dude,
maybe the
we're-
architect.
you know, and it's
So I want to
good.
ask you about Italy and where to go, because we've decided that's our next trip. We need to go. We haven't been to Italy, so
I would, however long you can stretch it, I would rent a townhouse in Florence, downtown, within 3 or 4 blocks of the train station. That's where I would go.
Okay.
And then you just get on a train and you go. Or we had a sommelier van driver that would
well, that's
pick
a
us
good
up
combo.
every Sunday. Every Sunday we were there. Sunday was reserved for going down into Tuscany and going to drink wine.
That
And
sounds
just
amazing.
I love it. I love Italian wine because it's such a value too. You can get great wine at an excellent price.
if there's nothing else on the wine list, get a Chianti.
There you go.
They're all the same. They're made the same. The
that down.
grapes are the same. You know, just get Chianti. So I've been into Barberes from the Piedmont section of Italy. Now it's a little bit different, but still kind of the same DOCG, the same designation. What they have to do is it's got to be the same percentage of each type of grape. It's got to be either in wood or in steel. It's got to be aged at a specific time. I think the Italian wine that we drink most frequently is an Amalfi wine out of old vines. They had a fungus or something.
What's it called?
Francesca, Denuda, San Francesco. I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. But all the vines got wiped out, and this particular vineyard has some that the mite or the whatever the bug was that killed all the vines. This is in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, so it's in basalt. The ash kept the pH so high that particular animal couldn't survive. So there are vines in there. The base is that big around. These 600-700-year-old vines that are still producing fruit. So
That's wild.
Can we get some wine in here? Have you been to 30A in Florida?
What's in the Panhandle?
So and I'd say that it's a road, but it's watercolor.
So no, but that was some of that Duani stuff down there.
Oh man,
Yeah. One of my buddies was just over in Destin and came back with pictures. You know,
Florida is awesome.
It
is so
is.
good. It's easy to make fun of the Florida man, but man, they got it going on.
they do.
Well,
They do.
Alicia's the Florida man.
yeah. From Florida, left here to move back to Florida,
Which-
but I'm back here.
Which end of Florida?
I grew up right outside of Tampa, and then as an adult, I lived in Tampa. So
We lived in Boca Raton early
Okay.
in our career. I built a golf course community down there.
Nice,
In
yeah.
Boynton Beach.
yep.
Golf course communities. They coming back?
No, they're getting turned. They're getting turned into tract houses. That was a thing back in the day. Golf course communities got built in the '80s because the savings and loan industry was funding them, and it was really haphazard, really reckless, and we just overbuilt in a lot of places. I mean, it wasn't limited to just the Grand Strand of South Carolina or golf courses that got built in places it shouldn't have been anyway, and they never panned out financially because they depended on the people who lived in the neighborhood. And you know, you'd have a golf course community in Point Beach, Florida, and 25% of the people who bought houses there played golf. That was it, if you were lucky. So you had to try and make the golf course pencil on 25% of your residents.
So our podcast focuses on the luxury market, luxury housing market. And I think Saluda River Club has done a great job focusing on that. You mentioned the 97th percentile is where you sell houses and your customers. In your opinion, what do the homeowners in the luxury market look for?
Well, I think that you have to talk about the luxury market. You have to segment that. I mean, the houses you build are different than the houses that I build because you're usually building for a specific individual from start to finish, from architecture all the way through. And that's not really our template. And the difference is you give somebody really close attention and you let them drive the process of designing the house. And here, we have the template in place already, and the type of research and product development, the thought that goes into developing each floor plan. You can't do that on a one-on-one basis. You have to platoon your effort, and then make sure that you allow personalization of the houses. And we got ample. We'll let you basically do anything on the inside of the house, but very little on the outside of the house. At least we did before the downturn and the kinks in the supply chains. Does that make sense? I mean, I see it as two completely different businesses.
Oh yeah, you're figuring out what the buyer wants and building it, and if you build it, they will come. That's your mentality.
I think that's yes, yeah. And there are a lot of people who have done the pure custom home deal in the past, and don't want to do it again. Sometimes the process can be daunting, and sometimes they've never done it. A lot of the folks who bought some of these homes in here have been in 8, 10, 12. One guy this was his 17th home. He didn't have time in his career to worry about doing that. It needed to be something that worked for him when he got there, or worked for her when she got there.
I also think that a lot of people like the idea of doing a new construction home or a custom construction, but they just don't understand the whole process and don't understand how time consuming it can be. And when you have someone that can offer a product like that, and not have to go through that process, I think that is appealing to some people, between the time commitment and just all the decisions have to be made with the custom.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, RB's business and my business are alike in this respect, that we provide access to the professionals, the craftsmen, the tradesmen, the suppliers. We use our expertise and our contacts to provide the service of building a new home for them, whether it's a one-off full custom house or it's any house that we build. Somebody has to know the people. Somebody has to know the architects and the designers. Somebody has to know the concrete guys, and that's us. So we platoon all of those folks together into a process, and how we end up relating to the customer is where our processes diverge. Would you agree with that, RB? Does that make sense?
I do. I think it's, I was talking to Alicia about it the other day. It's an extremely hard business, what I do, to scale. And we've put all the effort into a system and basically a pathway. So they understand when they start where they're going to end, and managing the expectations. And really, I think what you're describing is very much starting with the end in mind, in that what this house is going to be. What the message of the architecture is going to be for them. And you do that based on what you think the market's looking for, and then you present it, and that's it. So you've eliminated a lot of the work to get to that point. You say you want to sell that house to that buyer, not fit every buyer into that house.
I think the baby boomers in particular, and I break baby boomers into two groups. The guys who were born from 1946 to 1956, I call the leading edge baby boomers. Both of my siblings, my sister was born in 1946, my brother was born in 1948. I was born in 1960. There was some lively discussion about that around the Christmas dinner since our parents are gone. But we were completely uniquely different in what we wanted. But what we have in common is that the baby boomers have never known what they wanted to buy until they saw it. The baby boomers were the first purely commercially driven consumers in the history of the world. We see things on TV, the toys that they used to tease and run commercials during the Saturday morning cartoons. Y'all probably don't even remember. The only time you could see cartoons in 1966 was on Saturday morning between 8 and noon. That's when you got the Jetsons and the Flintstones. But the commercials were just, who knew you needed a Johnny 7, which was a plastic gun that shot 7 different kinds of bullets.
I want one of those now.
You didn't know you needed it until you saw it, and by golly, once you saw it, you had to have one. I think we've been dialed in that way the whole time. So how does that translate into what we do? I think our leading edge baby boomers see what we've done. They didn't know they wanted it, but man, it was just the thing they had to have.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It
Yeah.
does. I'd say I just recently met with a leading edge baby boomer. Love that term now. And use that. And they have a cash buyer too. So cash buyer, leading edge, they're said, I'm going to be within $50,000 of this budget, and I want a house that fits that, and can't think outside of that box. They are just show it to me.
The leading edge guys were much more impacted by our parents, and our parents were the children of the Depression. And I think when my sister was born, Dad had been home from the Pacific about 9 months and a day. But before that, he was on a farm in Lee County, South Carolina, where it didn't matter if you had money or not, because there was nothing to buy. And the frugality that came from the experience of living through the Depression had a much greater impact on the first wave of children born to them when they got back from Europe or the Pacific. And the next group, the back end of the boomers, I call them the Jones boomers, born from 1957 to 1964. We have been more about keeping up with the Joneses. We've been much more ready to spend. We've been much more ready to travel. We're just not as conservative because we weren't imbued with the same fiscal discipline that came from the experiences of our parents.
I have never thought it that way. I didn't even interrupt you, but my parents are the earlier boomers, and I mean, you hit them to a T of what they are like, and you are absolutely. I'm just like, we don't need any therapy anymore, y'all. We figured it out.
Well, I'm thinking of the older clients. We build a lot of homes for retired people.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the older clients from 2010 to 2015 or so. And then the recent buyers. And they're definitely different.
There's no question. I'll tell you that I knew it was on. There is a National Association of Home Builders always puts on a good convention, and there's always a lot of training. And I've gone to a lot of those, but there was one particular presentation, and this was probably 2016 or 2017. There were pictures of a neighborhood in Summerlin, which is a vast master plan community north of Las Vegas. And they had, it was like a pavilion in the middle of a pool that surrounded it. It was a moat pool around an outdoor room that was glass and steel. And I thought, my gosh, those guys have figured out that the Jones boomers have arrived on the scene. They're spending $1 million in the backyard of a model home. $1 million just for the backyard. And I thought, it's on. They know more than I do. I won't tell you which big company it is, but it's a national home builder that serves a luxury market. And that was the moment I decided that I should get back here and figure out how to do some really, really over the top things in our models. And that's what I hadn't spent $1 million in a backyard yet.
Right.
It's still Columbia.
I think the hacienda of that vineyard house you mentioned.
The casita in the back. Yeah.
That was beautiful with a gunite pool and outdoor fireplace, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. That one was a mic drop.
Didn't that one also have a putting green or something
They
like
had
that?
a putting green back there.
That's so cool.
Yeah, but that was the perfect intersection of consumer research and product development. It really was. I will not top that the rest of my career in terms of pairing the two together with a specific targeted consumer in mind, and we got them.
Yeah.
We sold one of those every 17 days.
I was going to say, those
average.
sold so fast.
They sold 2.5 times the rate I wanted them to sell.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. We couldn't slow it down with price increases, drop the incentives. We just couldn't slow it down.
Yeah.
Which is what led to the replatting of the Grove, the new section. Two things happened there. The architect laid off his entire crew when COVID hit. All of his production staff was laid off.
Wow.
Right in the middle of developing a new series of plans that were complementary to the vineyard houses. But we couldn't get the plans finished. I thought, geez, let's just go ahead and replat. We'll use the same plans from the vineyard over in the Grove for, I think, 14 lots. And in the meantime, we'll work on finding somebody to finish the production drawings for the new house plans. That's what happens. So sometimes necessity is the mother of invention.
There you go.
Do you think it's possible for a custom builder like our company to do the model that you have spoke of let's figure out what the market wants, present that to the owner, and then let them kind of fall in line without having the land? I'll add that. That's the main thing. That's the big difference. We don't have any land. We build on your lot for the most part. Mm-hmm. Is that a possible model for a company like ours?
I think that the potential consumer for that business model is out there, but you'd have to be very, very meticulous in how you seek to find him. But in order to be able to do any of the programming that we do, you would have to have a defined starting point. You'd have to have basically, I'll build on your lot, but here is a chassis that we're going to start with, and that way you can program what your expansion opportunities are. You could go in and whatever your software system is that you would use, you can pre-program those options, upgrades, and modules that stack onto the house. I mean, I've toyed around with a lot of that. Mm-hmm. How custom can one be? And it still comes back down to, I think you have to have a book of plans that you have familiarity with. You remember Ernie Magaro?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Ernie had Rymark Homes, and I mean, he had a completely different customer than anybody I've ever tried to sell to. But I mean, he knew his plan so well that he knew that he didn't need 2 5-pound boxes of roofing nails. He needed 1.5. He knew the plan so well. But my point there is, if you get that kind of familiarity with a chassis or a template plan that you can then get that consumer to adapt to, that'd be a model I'd pursue for that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's so different. At some point, you can do one thing really well, and I think it would be hard to half do that. Mm-hmm. We've tried to do a portfolio plan offering, and what happens is people, they want the design build process. Mm-hmm. So that's our customer, and trying to go after to serve two masters sometimes is fruitless.
Yeah, I mean it would be that. I think that's the only way you could do it. And I don't think your customer could be the guy who wants to dictate the process.
Well, they're not doing that.
Okay.
They're not our customer. That's the one. Our process is what we sell on in our system, and it's a constant effort. But 1 out of 10 right now may be that customer. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get it to 0 out of 10.
Perfect.
It is hard.
It is. I mean, that part's a tough business. But until 2007, that's what guys did. I mean, new homes accounted for a third of the total market in Columbia, Richland, Lexington, Kershaw counties. Until 2010, it was a third, and today it's about 19% of all the homes sold in Richland, Lexington, Kershaw counties today. It's 19%, and if you take that stat and you go back and look at the fact that only 40 builders out of 616 survived the downturn, I think one of the real shifts that occurred was the ability to have a builder who fit your unique style. 616 builders have 616 different ideas about what houses ought to look like. I mean, there's one guy, I remember, he prided himself on having 12-piece crown molding in the foyer.
Wow.
That was his gig. And everybody who wanted 12 pieces of crown molding in the foyer, he was their guy.
Right.
But the choices were out there, and those choices went away with their exit from the industry. And it's not available now, which is why I think the new home industry has lost half of its market share against resales. Mm-hmm. So
that shift, the idea of controlling the process, I've seen all aspects of that in our business. And I remember talking to you early on, and I had talked to you about, we've got this $500,000 remodel project and blah, blah, blah. You're like, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. We don't do any remodels anymore. And, I've been an indentured servant, for lack of a better word. And
You sold yourself. to
oh
the
my
guy.
gosh,
Yeah.
you're not buying a person at this point. You're going to buy a home. And that's what we're trying to kind of promote.
Right.
Alicia's helping with that for sure.
Yeah, it's funny how you remember talking to me about that. I don't. It's like, sorry. I'm sure it was a great conversation.
No, I hate, no, it was. And I think about it a lot. We don't remodel homes, and I hated remodeling. I'll tell you why. It's because I would step out of the car, and here comes Billy Sue in his pajama pants with a cup of coffee, and I haven't even been able to assess what's going on. Is the work going on? And it's every day of that.
Yeah.
And it'll wear on
You
you.
just got to
a little bit.
pick your poison, man. That ain't one for me.
No, sir.
So we should talk about amenities, because I think that that's a huge part of this community. I think Saluda River Club is very unique of the location, which you talked about. People love that school zone right by the interstate. Obviously, the style of the homes and the community. Everyone's always talking about the community. And how essential do you think our amenities here are for Saluda River Club?
Well, I think that we had an opportunity in 2005 through 2008 was unique because of the ease of funding. We had the opportunity to experiment. I'll give you an example. The Chickawaw Outdoor Center was like, that was it. We were going to have the Chickawaw Outdoor Center. And about, I don't know, halfway through the process, I got the idea that the style of homes in the Village District, which are called variously neo-traditional, TND, traditional neighborhood design, that alley served, pedestrian-friendly kind of a pedestrian neighborhood, that I got the idea that would be a way that these leading-edge baby boomers, and maybe even some silent generation folks, and that I view that as being the generation of people born from 1932 to 1945, some of those later silent generation consumers, as well as their younger siblings in the first wave of the baby boom, would be interested in retiring in a TND style neighborhood. So that's when I decided to add the what's now called the Village Clubhouse. That whole amenity was an afterthought. We put it in there specifically to do the age restriction and to create a place that would be attractive to more mature buyers. But we had the flexibility to do that. So, whatever we spent, I can't remember how much it was, but if we had not put those amenities in when we put them in the course of history and the crash, we probably would not have survived. So to me, what the amenities did was to ensure the survival of Saluda River Club when everybody else went down. This is the only neighborhood in the entire three-county market that survived without having to turn to tract builders or
I was gonna mention
voluntarily.
that, yeah.
This is the only neighborhood
Yeah.
where it didn't occur, and I think that the presence of those amenities, and some of the design team that put things together, it was a well coordinated, well connected design, and I think to me that's the importance of the amenities. Now, your perspective as a resident or a neighbor is, I'm sure it's a gathering spot. It's a place for birthday parties. We had one wedding reception. Our oldest reception was here. The second one, we had the rehearsal dinner the night before, because there was nobody living here back in the day. There weren't too many people living here. But I think it's a place that everybody wants to show it off, whether you're me as the developer, or my team that built it, or my sales team, or you guys as residents and in the business. I mean, certainly doing what you do, Sarah. You want to show it off, and you want to use it and have great experiences there. So I think in that regard, I think it does what amenities typically do. But the fact that we've got the gathering place for everybody down on the river really brought the value, if there's a value to being on the water, by doing that massive complex down there, we took the river from down actually at the river and we spread it through the whole neighborhood.
Yep.
So everybody gets a little piece of it. And, a lot of the traditional pattern for developing on any kind of body of water or on some view is you carve up your best lots. You get the most money you can, and then you strand the guy back behind you. And you never get those lots sold, or they don't meet the pro forma or whatever. And the model we had here was, let's put the Chickawaw down there and then make it everybody's place. And I think that decision to not carve up the best acreage, the best riverfront, and turn it into individual lots is probably why we have been able to support the values in here. And I measure those by price per square foot. I just don't think that there's any way we would have accomplished that without our decision to put the Chickawaw down there. Does that
I agree.
answer your question?
Yeah.
Maybe more than you wanted?
No, it was perfect. And I agree. A lot of times I'll show families around the neighborhood because, as with Alicia and I being residents here, I think that's one thing that we really benefit in terms of being able to sell the properties here is showing that community lifestyle and showing the amenities and knowing about it. And I do and at first I always thought it was really weird. I was like, why do you ask me this? But I've had so many people, especially people from out of town, when I'm showing them, and they're like, but only certain people, they said, but is it only River District people that get to use the Chickawaw? I'm like, no, everybody can use it. Why would you ask me that? But I do think you're right. There are a lot of neighborhoods where you have to either pay extra to be a part of one clubhouse, or only certain parts of the neighborhood get to use a certain amenity. And I think it was really smart to be able to make it for everyone. It's for the whole community.
Yeah. And I think that's why we do have a good community here, because we are there on Friday nights with our kids while they're running around or doing fire pits and stuff. And everyone's doing that. We're meeting our neighbors that way. I mean, how many residents are in Saluda River Club now?
505 occupied homes.
Yeah. So how would we typically meet all of our neighbors without these amenities?
Right.
Yeah. So
You can record this. I'll tell you. There is no place I would rather live than Saluda River Club, because this would suit Debbie and I at our stage of life so well. And there was a momentary chance we thought we were going to do it, because just an unsolicited offer to buy our house. We've been in a house for 28 years now since we moved to South Carolina, but I thought there was a chance we were going to have to move in here. And I mean, I can
could you imagine?
I just,
People be knocking on your door.
Andy, you can come hang out at the Chickawaw with us on a Friday night. You passed up that opportunity.
I'm the mayor. I'm the president of the HOA. I'm the plumber. I'm the builder. I'm the developer. I just would not. I'd love to live here.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff coming that we're going to be building that, I mean, I'd love to live in some of this new stuff we're introducing in upstream.
Yeah.
But everybody knows my voice. And I could not sit on a patio and have a conversation with my wife without somebody listening,
Right.
Yeah.
and trying to decipher what it meant for them, that kind of thing. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Totally get that.
We own a lot next to our house. It's just part of the property.
Right.
And I said, what would actually might be a good idea is a build to rent. I said, and actually I have renters already lined up. I have clients. And Alex goes, so you want to build a house and rent it to your clients in process to live next door to them? I was like, yeah, that's the worst idea.
That's terrible.
Yeah,
Terrible,
worst
terrible
As
idea.
soon as I said it, it was
Terrible idea.
Alex is so smart.
as soon as I said it, I realized that
Yeah.
I've had too much wine.
At some point, obviously not today, not in the foreseeable future, but at some point, Saluda River Club will be done. What's going to be next for you after that? I imagine a lot of traveling and wine will be involved. But would love to know what's next after.
It's
Saluda
not.
River
Look, it's
Club.
not that much wine. It's just it's a reason to travel.
Right.
Well, I retired in 2005. I did, and this is my retirement so far. I'd like to slow down at some point, and frankly, I'll take a Friday off every now and then without any guilty conscience about it. But what's next is would tell you, maybe this is the first time we talk about it publicly. West of Maine is the first thing really outside of Saluda River Club where we are deploying the lessons that we have learned as a team over the last 15 years. And I have an incredibly talented, very bright team. You know a lot of them. They've been with me a long time, and I concluded that we needed to do more, both for me and my family, and for my team and their families. And so we're gonna take what we've learned at Saluda River Club about how to do product development and consumer segmentation, and focus on really superior locations. And the first one outside of Saluda River Club is west of Maine, and it's going to be a much smaller scale community on the old mill pond.
Yeah.
Now, the old mill pond doesn't look like much today, but they're on the verge of wrapping up that dam reconstruction. And the town of Lexington is committed to, funded, designed hard surface trail, lighted landscape trail all the way around the old mill pond.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And we'll have, I think, about 75 houses in a gated, amenitized community. So a little plunge pool and clubhouse. And our folks will be able to walk out of their door and get on that trail and walk up to the Ice House amphitheater, or walk up to one of the restaurants on Main Street, or to the old mill.
I love that.
I mean,
It's gonna be a
love
really
that.
cool project. I can't wait to see.
I think just in terms of being a baby boomer, I'm kind of at the back end of the baby boom, but that is really appealing to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be very appealing to our cohort and others. But I think it's going to be the first time you can be in downtown Lexington in like 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something new in
Yeah.
downtown Lexington.
That's awesome.
So that's the next thing. We've got some other tricks up our sleeve I'm not going to talk about yet, but I think that any place we can find the same consumer, if we can find a place where they might like to live, and it's a super location, whether it's infill or inner ring suburb, I think we'll do that. We're gonna try and go back to the old days with some larger lot subdivisions, which really is going to be easier to do in Lexington County as a result of the new zoning ordinance. The land sellers are having to reset their expectations about land value because the county council just decimated their value by cutting the density out, which I think is fine for the county and fine for the folks who have really well located property. But I think the next thing I'd like to see is maybe something that feels like the River District but outside of Saluda River Club.
Yeah.
I think there's potential for that. And really where I'm leaning is something that would be like a fusion of the River District and the Vineyard Grove kind of vibe. Let's take a bunch of houses that fit and feel together, feel good together, and let's put them on larger lots and keep some trees. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah.
So that's kind of out there.
Sounds
Love it.
awesome.
Yeah. Can't wait to see it all unfold.
If you're enjoying Design, Build, Sell, please drop us a rating and review on Apple iTunes. It really helps us grow this podcast, and it would mean the world to us. Please follow along at designbuildsellpod.com. There you can find all of our links to social media, including our Instagram handle at Design, Build, Sell Podcast. If there's a topic you want us to cover on our show or a guest you want us to have on, please direct message us at Design, Build, Sell Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love you to help us shape this podcast. Thanks again. We'll see y'all next week.